3 months after the cancer took the use of his legs, Harlow Giddens' 2 sons and his daughter made their decisions in the span of 11 days, each one by phone, each one with a reason that sounded like it had been rehearsed. The man who showed up was 52 years old, drove a white van with a dented rear panel, and had been delivering groceries to the neighborhood for 6 years. He did not know Harlow's name when he first saw him sitting on the front porch in the wheelchair, trying to reach a package that had been left 3 feet from the ramp. He parked. He got out. He handed the man the package. He said, "You need anything else while I'm here?" Harlow said no. The driver nodded and left. He came back the next Tuesday with the delivery, and the Tuesday after that. And then it stopped being just Tuesdays. Harlow Giddens was 71 years old. He had worked as an electrician in Shreveport, Louisiana for 38 years. He worked for a company called Bayou Electric for the first 9 years, and then he went out on his own with a license and a used truck and a phone number on a magnetic sign he stuck to the door. He called the business Giddens Electrical. He did not advertise beyond the sign and word of mouth turned out to be enough. He worked mostly residential, some light commercial. He was in attics in August when the heat hit 103 degrees. He was in crawl spaces in January with a flashlight and a knee brace and a bad back he had been managing since 1997. He charged fair. He showed up when he said he would. He did not cut corners on materials, and he did not bill for hours he had not worked. For 29 years, those things were enough to keep the phone ringing. He had a way with difficult customers that his sons never understood. When someone called him angry, already decided they had been cheated by the last electrician, already primed to find fault, Harlow would listen the whole time without interrupting. He would wait until they ran out of words. Then he would say, "All right. Tell me what you need. Not what happened. Not what went wrong, what you need." People stopped being angry when someone asked them that. His sons thought he was just being a pushover. Harlow knew the difference between giving in and giving people a way out of their own corners. He raised 3 children in a 2-story house on Canfield Road in a part of Shreveport that was not the good part, but was not the bad part either, which meant it was the part that nobody noticed. His wife, Cecilia, had taught 4th grade at Linwood Elementary for 27 years. She died of a brain aneurysm on a Wednesday in March, 11 years before the cancer came. She was 59. She was grading papers when it happened. The papers were still on the kitchen table when the ambulance arrived, and Harlow had not been able to move them for 3 days afterward. On the 4th day, he stacked them carefully and put them in a box, and put the box in the spare room and closed the door, and did not open it again for a year. He kept the house. He kept going to work. He cooked badly and ate whatever was in the refrigerator and lost 14 pounds in the 6 months after Cecilia died, and then leveled off and stayed that way. His children called. His sons called the way sons call when they are also busy and also grieving, and do not know how to talk to a father who has never been the kind of man who talks about things. His daughter called every week and asked real questions and listened when he answered. But she was in Houston, and Houston was 5 hours away, and 5 hours is the kind of distance that makes you believe showing up is impossible, when actually it is just inconvenient. He did not retire until he was 68. By then his knees were done and his back was done, and his left hand had developed a tremor that made fine work difficult. He turned the last job over to a younger man he had been mentoring for 4 years. A man named Terrence, who had 2 kids and a work ethic that reminded Harlow of himself at 34. He signed over the client list. He gave Terrence the truck. He kept the magnetic sign. The cancer diagnosis came 14 months after he retired. Colon cancer, stage 3. Caught late because Harlow was the kind of man who did not go to the doctor until something was already wrong for a long time. He went through surgery, and then chemotherapy, and then more surgery, and the surgeries took something from his spine that the doctors said might come back and did not come back. He was in a wheelchair by October. The doctors said there was a chance the mobility would return, partially. They said it carefully, the way doctors say things they do not want to be held to. He called his children from the hospital, not to ask them to come, just to tell them. His oldest son, Drew, lived in Dallas with his wife and 2 teenagers and a job managing logistics for a trucking company. Drew said, "Dad, we want to help. We just can't uproot the kids right now. They're in the middle of the school year. Once summer comes, we can figure something out." Summer was 7 months away. Harlow said he understood. He did understand. He just also understood that 7 months is a long time to need help and not have any. His younger son, Keith, was in Atlanta. Keith had been in Atlanta for 12 years, working in insurance, living in a condo near Midtown with a girlfriend he had been with for 8 years and never married. Keith said, "Dad, I'm going to look into home care services, okay? There are good agencies. You shouldn't be alone, but I also can't just pick up and leave my whole life." He said, "My whole life," and Harlow heard it and did not say anything about it, because what was there to say? Keith sent him a list of 3 home care agencies by email that same evening. The list had no notes on it, just the names and phone numbers. Harlow looked at it for a while and then closed the email. His daughter, Noelle, was the one he had hesitated to call, not because she was the worst option, but because she was the one he could not stand to burden. Noelle had spent 4 of the last 8 years being the one. When Cecilia got sick the first time, a scare that turned out to be nothing but felt like everything while it was happening, Noelle drove in from Houston twice in 3 weeks. When Harlow had the knee surgery in 2019, Noelle took a week of PTO and slept on the couch and drove him to physical therapy and stocked the refrigerator before she left. Nobody asked her to do any of it. Nobody asked her to stop doing it either. She just became the person who handled things, the way one person always becomes that in every family, and then everyone else quietly stops volunteering because the position is already filled. She was 44 now and worked in hospital administration and had a son in middle school and a husband whose own father had just been diagnosed with Parkinson's. Harlow knew all of this. He called her last and explained it short and even, and when he was done, she was quiet in the way people are quiet when they are trying not to cry and also trying to think and also trying to figure out which one to do first. She said, "Daddy, I need you to listen to me. I want to come. I need to come. Marcus's father just got his diagnosis, and Marcus is not okay, and Jalen is struggling at school, and I am carrying things I didn't even tell you about because I didn't want you to worry." She stopped. Then she said, "I am so sorry." Her voice broke on the last word. Not theatrically, just broke, the way a voice breaks when it has been holding itself together across too many phone calls for too many months. Harlow said, "Baby, I know, you don't have to be sorry." She said, "That's not good enough. You being alone is not okay." He said, "I'll figure it out." She said she would send money. She said she would find someone. She said she was going to call the hospital social worker herself. He told her not to worry herself. She worried herself anyway. She called the social worker. The social worker called Harlow. Harlow thanked her and did not follow up on 2 of the 3 referrals she gave him. He followed up on 1, and the agency quoted him $28 an hour for 4 hours a day minimum. He did the math. He did not call them back. He came home to the house on Canfield Road in November. The ramp had been installed by the hospital's discharge team, a thing that had happened fast enough to seem efficient and slow enough that he had still spent 4 days in a facility he did not like before the ramp was ready. The house had not changed. His tools were still in the garage. Cecilia's reading chair was still in the corner of the living room. The spare room with the box of papers was still closed. The chair was harder than anything else. Not the wheelchair, which was just a new way of moving through rooms he had always moved through differently. The chair in the corner. He had bought it for her birthday in 2003, and she had read in it almost every night until she died. And for 11 years it had sat there being the shape of something he could not name exactly and did not try to. He had never sat in it himself. He managed. That was the word for it. He managed the mornings, which took twice as long as before. He managed the kitchen, which required rearranging things to be reachable from a seated position, a project that took him 3 days and left him angry in a way he did not express to anyone. He managed the bathroom with grab bars that the hospital had sent a physical therapist to install. The physical therapist's name was Brianna, and she was efficient and kind, and she showed him the proper way to transfer from the chair to the toilet and back, and Harlow thanked her and felt, for the first time in his life, truly old. He could not drive. The van he had driven for 6 years before retiring was gone. He ordered groceries for delivery, and it was the right solution, and he hated it the first 3 times and then stopped noticing. The delivery driver's name was Reuben Achebe. He was 52. He had been driving for the delivery service since 2018, after the machine shop where he had worked for 16 years closed, without much warning and with less severance than the employees were owed. He had a daughter in her mid-20s and a son in high school. His wife, Patricia, worked as a dietary aide at a nursing home 2 miles from their house. They lived in a small house on Milburn Street, 8 minutes from the Canfield Road neighborhood, in a part of Shreveport that was slightly more worn than Harlow's, but otherwise similar in the way it was not noticed. Reuben had grown up in that house. His parents had bought it in 1981, and he had inherited it when his mother died in 2016, a year before his father followed. He had 2 siblings, both in other states, both with reasons that had made sense at the time, and Reuben had been the one who stayed. Staying had cost him things he did not count, because counting them would have made them heavier. He was not a man who performed goodness. He did not post about the things he did online. He did not tell the story of the elderly woman on his route, whose walkway he had started salting in winter, because her daughter had asked him once, and then the daughter moved away, and he just kept doing it. He did not mention the way he sometimes carried groceries all the way to a kitchen counter instead of leaving them at the door, when he could tell the person inside was having trouble. He did it because the bags were in his hands, and the counter was right there, and it cost him 4 minutes. He noticed Harlow the way he noticed most things, which was quietly and without making a production of it. First delivery, November. Older man in a wheelchair on the front porch, package just out of reach. Reuben got out, handed it to him, asked if he needed anything else. The man said no in a way that meant he was not used to being asked. Second delivery, the following week. The porch railing had a strip of electrical tape on it, where it had started to pull from the post. Reuben looked at it for a second. He did not say anything. He set the bags inside the door as he'd been waved to do. He left. He came back on a Saturday with a tube of construction adhesive he had in his garage. He knocked. Harlow answered. Reuben held up the tube and said, "That railing's going to come loose. It'll take me 10 minutes. Harlow looked at him for a moment. He said, "I used to be an electrician. I should have fixed that myself 6 months ago." Reuben said, "That's not what I asked." Harlow let him fix it. That was November. By December, Reuben was stopping by on Saturdays that had nothing to do with deliveries. He helped Harlow rearrange the garage so that the things Harlow needed most were at a height he could reach from the chair. He helped him move Cecilia's reading chair to a different corner. Not because Harlow asked, but because during a conversation in the living room, Harlow had looked at the chair twice with an expression that was not grief exactly, but was something close enough that Reuben had said, "You want to move that?" And Harlow had said, "I don't know." And Reuben had waited, and Harlow had said, "Maybe just to the other corner," and they had moved it. Harlow sat in the living room for an hour after Reuben left and did not look at the chair once and felt slightly like he could breathe. Winter came. Reuben started arriving on Saturday mornings at 9 instead of afternoon. He brought coffee from the gas station on Milburn because Harlow had mentioned once that he liked the kind with chicory, and the gas station was the only place nearby that still carried it. Harlow had not mentioned it as a request. Reuben had just remembered. They talked the way 2 men talk when neither of them is used to talking, in partial sentences, about work and weather and what was wrong with how things used to be and how things were now. Reuben told him about the machine shop, about how the closing had been announced on a Thursday, and by the following Thursday they were done. About the years after that, the years of doing whatever came, delivery jobs and warehouse work, and a brief terrible stint in a call center that had lasted 6 weeks. About how driving the delivery route was not what he had expected his 50s to look like, but that his 50s were still his 50s and he had stopped arguing with that. Harlow told him about being in attics in August, about the time he had rewired an entire house in 4 days because the buyer needed the inspection passed by Friday or the sale fell through, and the owner of the house had 3 kids and needed the sale to go through, and Harlow had called in 2 favors and worked until 11 p.m. on a Wednesday and had the house done by Thursday morning. He did not tell the story to impress anyone. He told it the way a man tells a story when someone has finally given him a room to put it in. Spring came. Reuben brought his son, Dominic, one Saturday. Dominic was 17 and quiet in the way teenagers are quiet when they are in the presence of adults they have been told to respect. Harlow showed him the garage. He showed him the tools. He explained what each one was for with the patience of a man who had once had apprentices. Dominic asked 3 questions, and they were good questions. And Harlow answered each one fully, which was how you could tell he thought the questions were worth answering. On the drive home, Dominic said, "He's pretty cool." Reuben said, "Yeah." Dominic said, "Does he have any family?" Reuben said, "He has children." Dominic said, "Do they come?" Reuben said, "Not so far." Dominic looked out the window. He did not say anything else. Noelle called every Sunday. 40 minutes, sometimes an hour. She asked real questions, and Harlow answered them. And there were several Sundays when she cried quietly at the other end, and several Sundays when he almost told her about Reuben and did not, because telling her would have meant explaining why he hadn't mentioned him sooner, which would have meant explaining that he had not wanted her to feel replaced or relieved, and he was not sure which one he was more afraid of her feeling. Drew called monthly. The calls were 20 minutes. He asked about the physical therapy and the doctors, and whether the mobility was coming back. He did not ask what Harlow was eating. He did not ask who was coming by. He always said he was going to look at flights for summer. Summer passed. Keith called every few weeks. He had switched agencies, found a better one, and sent the information again. Harlow had not called them. Keith did not follow up on whether he had called. The money he sent every month was $250. It arrived on the 3rd. Harlow used it for medication copays. The fall of the 2nd year, Reuben noticed the back porch had a board rotting through. He did not mention it to Harlow first. He went to the lumber yard on a Saturday morning and bought the board and the screws and came back and told Harlow he was going to fix the porch. Harlow wheeled himself to the back door and watched. It took 2 hours. Harlow brought out the chicory coffee in 2 thermoses and set them on the outdoor table, and they drank it while the second coat of weatherproofing dried. Harlow said, "You know I keep expecting you to stop coming." Reuben said, "Why would I do that?" It was not a question. Harlow looked at the porch. He said, "People do." Reuben said, "I'm not people in that way." Harlow nodded. He picked up his thermos. He said, "Cecilia would have liked you." It was the first of the team he had said her name out loud to someone who wasn't his daughter in 4 years. He said it, the way you say a name that has been sitting in your chest long enough that the saying of it does not destroy you anymore, just moves through you a little. Reuben said, "Tell me about her." Harlow told him. He told him about the 4th grade classroom, and the papers on the table, and the reading chair, and the birthday in 2003, and the way she had laughed at things other people didn't find funny, and had never apologized for finding them funny. He told him about the Wednesday in March and the 3 days he couldn't move the papers. Reuben listened the whole time without filling the silences. He had learned from working a route for 6 years that people needed their silences not filled. By the end of the 2nd year, Dominic had been to the house 11 times. He had learned how to identify a 3-way switch and could explain the difference between a series circuit and a parallel circuit, and he had started carrying a small notebook where he wrote down things Harlow told him. He did not know he was doing anything other than spending time with an old man who knew things. He was 18 by then and had been accepted to a technical program at the community college, and his parents were proud in the careful way parents are proud when the money is tight and the plan is real but fragile. Harlow knew the money was tight because Reuben was not a man who complained, but he was also not a man who pretended. One Saturday in March, Harlow said, "How is Dominic doing with the application?" Reuben said he had gotten in. Harlow said, "Good." Reuben said the program was $11,000 a year and they were still working out the financial aid. Harlow said, "How much is the gap?" Reuben told him. Harlow said, "Okay." He did not say anything else. He changed the subject to the Cardinals. Reuben let him. That night, Harlow opened the desk drawer where he kept the things he kept. He found the number for the attorney who had done Cecilia's estate. He left a message. The attorney called back the following Monday. He did not tell Reuben. He did not tell his children. He told the attorney what he wanted to do, and the attorney did it. And then Harlow put the documents in the fireproof box under his bed, next to the folder that had Cecilia's important papers in it. The marriage certificate and the deed to the house, and the photographs she had kept organized in labeled envelopes, which was the kind of person she had been. He did not open the box again for 8 months. It was a Sunday in November. Reuben came by on a Sunday, which was unusual. He had Dominic with him. Dominic had just finished his first semester and had passed everything, including the electrical systems course, and Reuben had said they should stop by. Harlow already had the chicory coffee made. He had started making it on Saturdays and Sundays both. Dominic talked about the coursework, about the instructor who had been an electrician himself for 20 years before going into teaching, and how he was strict in the way that meant he actually cared. About the lab work, which he liked better than he expected. Harlow asked him specific questions. What gauge wire for a 20-amp circuit? What you check first when a breaker keeps tripping? Dominic got 2 out of 3 right, and Harlow corrected the third without making it a correction, just saying, "What you'd actually find is," and then the answer. After the coffee, Harlow said, "I need you both to come back to the bedroom for a minute." He led them down the hall slowly, the chair moving over the threshold with the strip Reuben had installed in the fall to make the transition smooth. He got down beside the bed with Reuben's help, opened the fireproof box, and took out a folder. He handed it to Reuben. Reuben opened it. He read it twice. The first time fast and the second time slow. The way you read something when you have understood the words but need to read them again to believe them. It was Harlow's will. The house on Canfield Road. The savings account with 41 years of an electrician's careful living in it, which was not nothing. A 529 account in Dominic Achebe's name with enough in it to cover 2 full years of the technical program with money left over. Reuben looked up. Harlow was watching him from the wheelchair. He said, "Harlow, I can't take this." Harlow said, "It's not for you, it's for your son. And yes, it is already done." Reuben looked at Dominic. Dominic had not spoken. He had read the page over his father's shoulder, and he was standing very still the way a person stands when the floor has shifted under them and they are not sure yet if it will stop. Harlow said, "That boy has been sitting in my kitchen since he was 17 writing things down in a notebook. You know what I noticed about that?" He looked at Dominic. "You never once wrote down a number. You wrote down the way things worked, why they worked. You wrote down the principle." He paused. "That's how Cecilia taught. She didn't drill facts. She taught children how to think about facts. I noticed that about you." He said it quietly. "I noticed that the first time you asked me a question." Dominic sat down on the edge of the bed because his legs had stopped holding him steadily. He did not cry the way actors cry. He sat there with his hands in his lap and his shoulders very still, and he breathed once, carefully, and then again. Reuben had not moved from where he was standing. He was holding the folder. His hands were not quite steady. Harlow said, "Your father showed up the day I came home to a house I did not know how to live in anymore. He showed up and then kept showing up. 2 years of Saturdays. You know what that is?" He did not wait for an answer. That is the thing people promise and don't do. He did it and didn't promise it once. Didn't announce it. Didn't ask for credit. Just came. He looked at Reuben. "Cecilia and I spent 41 years working in this city. We had a house and a savings account and no debt, and it all means exactly what I want it to mean now, which is this. The room was quiet. A car moved on Canfield Road outside. Someone's dog barked once and stopped. Reuben sat down on the chair by the dresser. Not Cecilia's reading chair, the other one. He sat in it the way a man sits when his legs have decided the conversation has gone on long enough. He said, "You could give this to your children." Harlow said, "My children have lives they built without this house in them. This house has been waiting for someone who needed it to become something. And I want Dominic to have the start I couldn't give to anyone who didn't show up to take it." Reuben looked at the floor. He looked at his son. He looked at the folder in his hands. He said, "We didn't do any of this for," Harlow said. "I know. That's the reason." Nobody said anything for a while. Reuben set the folder on the dresser. Dominic had put his hands over his face. Not dramatic. Just covering his face the way people cover their faces when they are feeling something too large for the room. Harlow looked at Reuben and said the same thing Cecilia had said to him once, on a night early in their marriage when he had fixed something in a neighbor's house for free and come home embarrassed about it, and she had taken his hands and said it. "Goodness comes back. It takes the route you didn't expect, and it takes longer than it should. But it comes back." Reuben nodded. He did not speak. The box on the dresser had 3 more things in it. A folded piece of notebook paper, one of Cecilia's labeled photograph envelopes, and the magnetic sign from the old truck, the one that said Giddens Electrical, with the phone number that no longer worked. Harlow looked at Dominic and said, "When you get your license, you can change the name, or don't change it. Up to you." He nodded toward the sign. "It's paid for." Now here is the part of this story I want you to sit with, and I already know how it is going to land with some of you. Harlow left everything to a delivery driver's teenage son, not to Drew, not to Keith, not to Noelle, who had been the one who showed up across the years, who had cried on the phone for 4 years, who had carried more than her brothers and carried it without being thanked. She had not come when he came home to the ramp. She had not been there for the first Saturday he could not open his own cabinet. She had not been there for the porch board, or the November mornings, or the chicory coffee that was always made for 2. She had been 5 hours away and genuinely overwhelmed, and she had called every Sunday for 4 years without missing one, and she had told him the truth about why she could not come, even when the truth made her look like less than she wanted to be. And Harlow had known all of that and loved her for all of it. He left her a letter instead. 3 pages, handwritten. The left hand that had developed the tremor, making the letters uneven in a way that looked like weather. He told her what he had never been able to say on a Sunday phone call. He told her about Cecilia's chair and why he had finally moved it. He told her she had been the best of what he and Cecilia had made together. He told her he was not leaving the house to Reuben, and Dominic because she had failed. He was leaving it to them because she had already been given something her brothers hadn't, which was the years of him telling her the truth, and you cannot put a number on what that is worth. She read the letter 4 times. The first 3 times she cried. The 4th time she did not cry. She folded it back into the envelope, and she put it with the letters from her mother she had kept in a box in her closet since 2013. She called Keith. She called Drew. Nobody argued. That surprised her. Maybe it shouldn't have. And if this story stayed with you, if it made you think of someone who showed up for you without making a speech about it, someone who just kept coming back, call them. Not a text, a call. Because a text is what you send when you want the feeling of having done something. A call is what you make when you want the other person to have something. And most of the time, the people who have been quietly showing up have been quietly waiting longer than you know for someone to notice. Don't make them wait any longer.